Alright, it's time to just rip the band-aid off. Hello! This is what I learned from compiling all of the breaker math. We're gonna keep this short, I promise. Look, ice sucks to break. This is just a reality of Netrunner. I believe it was Douglas Adams who once said it is a well-known fact that those people who must want to do breaker math are ipso facto the least suited to do it. Breakers are often inefficient. They boost and break in wonky, uneven values. It's exacerbated by varied ice strengths. This is game design. This is intentional. It's supposed to be like this. A big part of Netrunner is creating a rig that handles things reasonably across a variety of matchups. That's kind of a big piece of the game. But that doesn't mean it doesn't suck to deal with. So one of my metamates who's actually good at math, Carrick, shoutouts, and I sat down and put everything into a spreadsheet. This is some nerd shit. I started this project with a very particular goal that we'll talk about later, and he ended up doing most of the work, so I want to make sure that that's out there. Our goals were twofold. Show all the breaker math in one place, and then use that to extrapolate on which breakers, and by extension ice, are actually good. However, I'm not going to do the majority of the work here. You are. There's provisos. So data never tells the whole story. Please don't take any given number or data set as objective proof of a card's viability, no matter how firm I am in my opinion. My opinion is just that. I have a lot of biases, as we all do. I'm a criminal player, and I primarily play kill decks, so I value spiky ice over the slightly obnoxious ETR. Many ice and breakers have conditions that alter their viability and rates. We did account for that to some extent, but we can't account for them all, / just really don't want to. Support cards on both sides, your leeches, your game dragons, anything corp side that alters ice strength, massively impact breaker viability once they push past certain common breakpoints. These are not going to be accounted for in the tables for the most part. There's just too many things. Like, I am not doing the math on everything if it has a buff with Isaac and Leo. I'm not doing it. I'm also not doing every single version of something like Echelon. We do account for breakers with binary states, so Shibboleth at or past threat, for example. Scalables like Echelon and Rising Tide kind of present challenges. More than that, they just present doing a whole bunch of work over and over and over again. Infinite Scalars were left as base, which doesn't really represent them well, so the data for Hyperbaric in the sheet is just kind of bad. Don't count that as anything with Hyperbaric. I'm basically not going to bring up Hyperbaric after this point. Others were given their most common use cases, so we assumed, for example, that Echelon has 3 breakers. Adjust your math accordingly. We also kind of work with Rising Tide, assuming that it's at corroder numbers and that you have one thing in the bin that gives it 1. Everything beyond that, you're smart enough to figure out. Normally, I'd include slides that show the data, and I will do some, but this is a lot. So I'm going to provide a public link to a version of the spreadsheet in the description, as well as in a comment, because apparently YouTube doesn't let me put links in the description unless I give them my personal information, which I'm not going to do. Instead of combing over each individual number and every little card in the game, I'm going to go over some takeaways from each sheet, which means it's grouped by subtype. And then I'm going to delve into a couple specific examples, interesting cases, and takeaways. Like I said, this is going to be short as far as short is for me. My hope is that this sheet will be a useful reference source, especially if you're playing on like JNet or whatever, you can just glance over and know. But it'll also help make deck building easier for both sides by identifying taxing ice and or efficient breakers for popular ice. I'm not in the business of clickbait, but one of these is going to have a gigantic I told you so for a specific group of players who I belong to. You'll see when we get there. Again, I had a goal in mind for this thing, and it will become clear by the end. Let's talk fractors and barriers. So fractors are basically the only good ice right now. Unless a runner face checks a sentry, fractors are the only ones that really get anything done at a reasonable price point. Curupira is good. It's not as good as you think it is. There's a very real argument for playing Rising Tide in any deck that can reasonably plant a second fractor in the bin. More HB decks should probably be running Hagen. And I regret to inform you that I will not have a secret amazing solution to the likes of Brand beyond just throwing an entire propeller at it. I'm not going to spend a slide on that. All the other ones we're going to talk about in more detail. But no, Brand's just a problem, sorry. Alright, Curupira, and what we can do about it. So it's not that Curupira is bad, but I do think there's an argument to be made that you should not default to it in criminal decks. The amount of value Fourth Break is free represents is inconsistent at best, and downright pointless at worst. Generally speaking, a deck that is running cheap barriers is not also running ridiculously expensive barriers, unless we are counting Maskarovka as cheap and like Pharos on the top end of those same decks. It is not common that even Weyland is running Pharos and in the decks where you do see Pharos, like your BTLs or certain types of Zviki, it's all the more likely that the other barriers that see play are going to be imbigginable. They will scale. They will get advanced into being ridiculous, and then Curupira still doesn't get anything done. How often do you actually have access to a farmable Strength 1 barrier and a Blade of a Ping, a Tattoo Bola that they can't swap, that's important, in a deck that also runs a giant one that you get value out of by cheating? It probably just doesn't really happen. Ablative is one of those cases where they're going to let it fire, and then they're going to trash it, because a deck that runs Ablative is probably running Bran, and like hell they're going to let you cheat past a Bran by breaking an Ablative 3 times. Hell no. Ping is the only barrier in NBN that matters, because nobody's out here playing Klavetnik. And Tattoo Bola swaps, so the moment it becomes a threat, or just, you know, not a viable econ card for whatever reason, whoop, there it goes. And also, a lot of jinteki stuff is running, what, Botu maybe? And that's as big as it gets? It's not a factor in modern matchups, not nearly like it used to be. A lot of times you end up just paying for that 4th break in advance. The 4th one is not actually free. It works just like a discount when you're dealing in marketing. It's not that good a lot of the time. I present alternatives in 3 colors. One of these is going to be contentious. The first is Rising Tide. This is a no-brainer. Rising Tide typically has a higher base, assuming that you get at least one more thing in the bin. It ends up tying, if not beating, Curupira across 4 installs. And it comes in 2 cheaper. That is significant. Rising Tide is really good. The better it boosts with its text, the more convincing this argument is. I think, generally speaking, you would be better off playing Rising Tide against most of the field. Yes, I am going to say nice words about Mackler. Mackler's install cost is ass. I'm not going to defend paying 5 for a breaker. That feels terrible. But if you're making one big run a turn, i.e. playing twinning, it is better than Curupira in several relevant cases. This is one of those things where you're just going to have to take a look at the chart and judge whether or not the matchups that you run into the most or that you have the most trouble with warrant that. And also, this is a playstyle thing. If you're running a lot, Mackler is terrible. Don't do it. If you're running once per turn, probably, and they're not doing a ton of barriers, suddenly Mackler looks way better. Its rates are great with the rebate, which is the math that we supply in the chart. And lastly, Pressure Spike compares favorably, if not equally, on almost everything, and its threat text lets you actually answer Bran and Pharos, which are the only big barriers that really matter until Botu hits threat, and then it's just Bran math. It's one of the only really, like, solid Fractors out there. It is also expensive. It's significantly better than Mackler. I would definitely say Rising Tide and Pressure Spike are worth considering just about everywhere. Friends don't let friends play Marjana unless you're Musliat and you're dumping them to pump Rising Tide. Marjana is not a reasonable alternative. I've seen some folks running it in Musliat. As a Musliat enjoyer, I really want to caution you against it. It's one of those things that seems like a great idea at the time, and then you play it, and then you realize, crap, I just need to feed this to a real breaker. So you run like a 1, maybe 2 of Rising Tide, and you pump it that way, and suddenly you're way more efficient. Pretty good. Just don't play Marjana otherwise. Breaking anything with that card feels like pulling teeth. Hagen's really taxing, y'all. We did our math assuming the runner was at 3 breakers, and Hagen still compared favorably to several more popular pieces of ice. And that's assuming they have their whole rig and can't really lose anything to Hagen. Oop. A threatening barrier face check is rare. A non-clickable one even more so. Hagen is both. And it costs 4. Nice. If we broadly accept that ice is just a paywall by mid to late game, especially how fast the current game is, right? Like, most runners are ready to go pretty damn quickly, or they're losing. Hagen is more deserving of play and rush HB than most comparable options. This is a really solid piece of ice for 4. You should seriously consider it. Bonus points for punishing Audrey and Matryoshka rigs. Matryoshka less so. Audrey, yeah, you can do pretty nasty things with this. I like it quite a bit. It doesn't stop either. It's just really obnoxious to deal with. Being able to tax Seb more than not at all is really important. Now, granted, this is just going to die to Botulus like everything else in that matchup, but hey, it's a bit better. Alright, let's talk decoders and code gates. We're barely going to talk about decoders and code gates. Code gates are not exactly having a moment right now. The good decoders are really, really good, and code gates on the whole are not. Shapers should really consider running Euler in almost everything if they can manage it. It's the single most efficient breaker in the game on its install turn. I do not say that lightly. It's like its condition is easy to meet, and it is incredibly good at what it does. If you're playing NBN and are remotely concerned with ice, you should probably be playing at least 2 copies of Piranhas. Piranhas, we're going to talk about Piranhas specifically. It's pretty good. What do you know about breaking for free? This is one of the few cases where I'm just going to put the math right in front of you. I'm sorry, do you see that mode of 0? Euler is nuts. This thing has good numbers. The math on this is crazy. When the most you're ever going to spend on the game's only threatening code gate is 4, you know you're gaming. Like, that's amazing. Piranhas for 4, Valentau, which basically nobody plays for 4. Everything else is cheap, cheap, cheap. Nobody plays Microweb. Nobody plays Atini. And basically nobody plays Yalendra. I think that card is ass. I really don't like it. And then everything else is 2 or less. Holy crap. You just kind of walk through. That is alarmingly strong. Breaking subroutines for free is huge. Code gates are often more concerned with having, like, interesting subs than they are being strong, and Euler says, ha, neat, and then just walks through. Non-shapers are going to struggle to make use of this, but you better have a damn good reason not to run this in green. If you can run Euler, you probably should. This, Propeller, and Revolver are basically the best ice-breaking package in the game, and can run so cheap that they warrant play for that reason alone. I have a deck that I might do a highlight of later that fully leans into the disposables and mag, to the point where it basically never runs out and it makes money for doing it. I've seen a lot of variants in this played by very, very good players that go a little bit less hard in the concept, but still run those, usually with some permanent breakers as a fallback. I don't even think you need the fallback anymore. I think the game runs so quick, and Shaper is so capable of just, like, winning while doing its setup, that you should probably just learn to play disposables and learn to play against them, because taxing them out can feel nearly impossible. So Piranhas is basically the only good code gate, and it doesn't even have a hard ETR. It's a rough sell, this card. I really have mixed feelings in the sense that it's, like, objectively strong, objectively good, but code gates are so bad that it still struggles. Putting this behind a Ping or a Pharos makes it the actual best in class, but that bar is ankle high. Code gates suck. NBN Ice is kind of a disaster beyond this. You should be running multiple to keep runners honest. They will probably favor installing a killer as a general safety strat, then a Fracter because they want to get past your pings and all, and not get stopped by it and tagged, and then a Decoder because they don't care if they hit VSA. But Piranha's existing changes that completely, and now you have to care. If this wasn't 3 influence, I'd be running this in jinteki for the same reason. Bad pub be damned. I like this card quite a bit. I wish that code gates on the whole were better. I wish that decoders were not so efficient. But as it stands, yeah, no, if you're playing yellow, I don't know why you wouldn't be playing Piranhas. And if you aren't already playing Piranhas, you either don't care about ice or you're wrong. Alright, let's talk killers. I was right about Carmen all along. Unless you're desperate for slots, you should never play this crap-ass card. I hate Carmen. I've hated Carmen for a long time. If you aren't playing Revolver, you're either an anarch or you're wrong. I am so done seeing justifications for Carmen. There are basically no other good killers, unless you're a stealth sicko and you play After Image, and you shouldn't be. I'm sorry, did you think I was done being right? This was the impetus for the whole project. All of this was born of dislike for this stupid card, and the fact that it's ubiquitous despite all good sense and math and taste. Almost every killer can break strength 1 sentries with ease. The only good base 2s, which is what Carmen starts at, are Anemone, Sysenton, and Serevna. One of those is relevant. Anemone is just gonna hit you on res, and then the subroutine is basically not a problem. Serevna, yeah, that's gonna hit you on res as well, which is awful, and then once you actually have to break it, yeah, you get to walk through, but it's still 3. It's not that good. Sysenton, yeah, you need an answer to it, but as you might be aware, Sysenton isn't actually that good at killing you unless you walk into it with a hand that's less than 5 and all of them are the same type. The odds of Sysenton killing are really, really low, and you're still better off finding some other way to break the damn thing. And then everything else that Carmen needs to break breakpoint-wise is ass. Yes, with Game Dragon, it clears everything more efficiently because Strength 3 is an important breakpoint for sentries. That's absolutely true. And literally every single breaker in the game of Netrunner is a lot better when you boost its base strength by 1 for functionally nothing. That's not a credit to Carmen. That's a credit to cards like Game Dragon and Leech. No. Just find slots for Revolver and Crim. Please, for the love of God, you have access to the best killer in the game by default. Just play 2 to 3 copies of Revolver and figure it out from there. You can play anything else out of faction. Echelon takes 4 breakers to get particularly good, but I would still rather keep an empty Revolver on the table and play Echelon and Criminal than play Carmen anymore. I am tired of watching this Starbucks girly have to chug an entire Chesva just to perform basic tasks. That's it. That's the presentation. In conclusion, NSG, please unban Begalter. Thanks so much for watching, reading, looking. I will have, like I said, I'll have the sheet accessible for you. Go do some math. Good luck, have fun.